Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, they've been in love.
I truly love her in every sense.
Since they were 7.
I never thought I'd be with Michael in this way.
But here's the thing.
Angie and Michael are first cousins.
You can't have sexual relations with your first cousin in the state of Utah.
Let's not get too self-righteous about what you're not doing in Utah.
And they just got married.
They've announced it on Facebook, half naked, tongues down each other's throat.
I'm sorry this offends you so much.
You're not, though.
You get so much, like, gut feelings
It's disgusting. This is my family.
Kathy might be jealous because she likes Michael.
No.
Today's going to be a changing day in your life. You've never had anybody working harder to bring you to the threshold of change than right now.
Even during the 7 years I was married, I always would pine for Angie. And I would go online and I'd check out her profile pictures, and I would just stare at them before I would have to turn away, and I just couldn't look at it anymore. It was just too painful. It was like looking at your true love, the woman you're supposed to be with, knowing that you can't have this person. It was torture. One time, we went to visit each other. I brought my wife, she brought her ex-husband, and I just remember looking at this guy, and the first thought that came to my mind is, who is this clown? What is he doing here? She's not with the right person. I'm looking at my ex-wife, and what am I doing?
Well, illegal, incestuous, and immoral. First cousins, Angie and Michael, say no laws or opinions can keep them apart. And those are some of the adjectives that are used in describing these kind of relationships in different states. Now, in fact, just 3 weeks ago, Angie and Michael left the state of Utah, tied the knot in Colorado. Take a look.
After we reconnected, we started messaging each other.
I was using love emojis, heart emojis, and he was saying, I love you.
There was a lot of innuendo there, like, let's go to the hot tub, I can show you my house, no one will be there.
I asked if he was willing to kiss, and he said yes. I said, with tongue? And he said yes, and so I was just elated. I couldn't believe that I was going to get the chance to kiss him.
We came over to her apartment, and we kissed for at least 3 hours. It ended up escalating to a point where I can't really say, because I can't incriminate myself. The state that I live in, Utah, it's actually illegal to have any kind of sexual relations with your first cousin.
I asked him if he would marry me, and he said, in a heartbeat.
There are 19 states in which marrying your cousin is legal. Utah is not one of them.
A Utah couple who are also first cousins has crossed state lines into Colorado to get married.
We're sitting there with the clerk, and she's typing up the marriage license. And she says, are you blood related? We look at each other, and she says, yes.
And she stopped and kind of stared, and we said, well, we're first cousins. That's why we're here, coming from Utah. And she just said, you're kidding me. This is our marriage license from Colorado.
Marriage certificate. Even on the marriage license, it says blood related? Yes. Relationship? First cousins. Bam! There we go.
We tied the knot.
We tied the knot. The knot is tied. We're crazy.
There was no sense of this is wrong. It felt right, and it felt like it needed to happen.
Being prosecuted and potentially arrested, that is a real concern. But I don't care. There's not a force great enough in this universe to keep me from Angie.
Okay, so you're married in Colorado.
That's correct.
But you are residing in Utah, and you cannot get married in Utah because that's against the law there, correct?
Yes.
Does Utah recognize the Colorado marriage?
No.
So if you're cohabiting and having sexual relations in Utah, is that against the law in Utah?
It is.
Okay. So why are you going so public with all of this?
The only public thing that we did at the beginning, at the outset, was just put up the petition. That's all we did, was just a petition to get the law changed. Some local news person thought that this was newsworthy and posted it. And from that on, and that point on, then it became public.
You did do the petition.
We did the petition in the legal sense, but not to gain any social recognition or any kind of publicity or any fame.
And you did do the interview when they came out the house, because you didn't have to do that.
No, you're right. We thought
could
that
have
it might
said
aid in the
no.
case. We could have.
Yeah.
But in an attempt to try to garner support and get this issue out there, I thought of a similar thing. When they did the hand raising thing, I was like, let's go back in time about 60 years ago. And what if the question was asked, would it be okay to have an interracial marriage. Let's say someone's white, someone's black, and they were to get married, and we said, how do you feel about that? Do you feel okay with that? Well, 60 years ago, the majority of the people would have raised their hands no. But we've evolved. We've learned more about how things work, and we're comfortable with that now. I kept thinking like everyone else, like maybe it's the genetic stuff. Well, no, because it turns out it's the same consequences of a woman giving birth over 40 or at the age of 40. Would anyone say no to that? I don't think so. So what is it really? So I kept digging, and realized that it turned out to have everything to do with immigration. And 50 years from now, we'll realize that that's not a good enough reason to keep ethnic groups from proliferating and growing.
Well, you say it's about immigration, but let's look at the history of the law concerning first cousin marriages. In 1846, Massachusetts Governor George N. Briggs initiated a study of individuals of profound intellectual disability. The implication was that he believed these individuals were a result of incest. In 1858, physician Samuel Merrifield Bemis stated that inbreeding does lead to physical and mental deprivation of the offspring. The 1870s, anthropologist Lewis Henry Morgan found consanguineous marriage increased the vigor of the stock. 1880s, 13 states passed laws against marrying one cousins, doubled in 1920. The last state to do so was Texas in 2005. So this didn't have anything to do with immigration. It had to do with concern about the genetics and whether or not you increased risk levels for offspring of marriages between blood cousins. Immigration had nothing to do with it.
Well,
that's not the history. You said that, and you said it real fast, and you said it with authority.
Yeah.
But no matter how loud you say it, doesn't make it right.
But I can present another study by the Independent UK that was published just recently about what's so wrong with cousins being married that would counter some of that stuff. And basically says in the genetic consequences, it's no greater than a woman giving birth at the age of 40, and this is an actual scientific study. So if I had some time, I could also present some counter arguments to that as well. But those are convincing.
We'll talk about that. I have a world-renowned expert here that's going to address that chapter and verse. We'll be right back.
There is a huge misconception when it comes to the genetic consequences of having children with your first cousin. In fact, they are no greater than a woman giving birth at the age of 40. It jumps from about 2% to 4% for a maximum of maybe 7%, but it's really negligible, not even a full standard deviation in statistical terms, completely overblown. We hear stories all the time of a regular relationship, not cousins, and they have issues with their children. Their children end up being special needs, but nobody's sitting there pointing the finger at them. We are not trying to have children. We are not actively seeking childbirth. But if we do end up doing that, we'll both be the best parents we can be.
Well, actually, people are pointing the finger at them. They're saying that these are high-risk pregnancies and are not recommended in the medical community. First cousins Angie and Michael say if they got pregnant, they would welcome their child with open arms. They say they are sick and tired of misinformation about first cousins having children. Well, Dr. Dana Grayson is a medical doctor, biochemist, and medical researcher who has helped develop treatments and preventions in hematology, oncology, infectious disease, biodefense, nephrology, cardiology, and neurology. Her medical research has been published in the world's most prestigious scientific journals. And so, Dr. Dana Grayson, weigh in on this, if you will. The comment here is, this is no greater risk than a 40-year-old having a pregnancy, which is increased risk. He said it's no different than that. That's just simply not true, is it?
Well, it's not true. It's cherry-picking the data. So if you only look at the time of birth for congenital anomalies, there is similar risk. It's slightly increased amongst first cousins compared to women, we call them advanced maternal age, so women over the age of 40. But also understand that just like your genes program what ends up happening to you. That's why my hair is curly, why Dr. Phil's hair is, well, Dr. Phil's hair.
That was uncalled for.
Cheap shot, right?
Super cheap shot.
All right, go ahead.
And so when you look at that, there's additional things you have to think about. It's not just when your child is born. So you have an increased risk of miscarriage, an increased risk of having a stillborn, an increased risk of early childhood death, increased risk of these congenital anomalies. But now let's say you potentially have a healthy baby. You have a lifetime risk of increased risk for everything that's genetic. Everyone carries around bad genes, right? If you meet Joe Schmo at a church or wherever you meet Joe Schmo and you get married and you have children, the chances are that your bad genes are not the same. But you share an aunt and an uncle. You share common relatives. So the chances that your bad genes are similar are so much higher than if you met somebody random. And those are things that now are beginning to be discovered and understood.
In these type marriages, stillbirths increase 80.6%. Child deaths after birth increase 80%. Miscarriages, 67%. Congenital anomalies, 6.1%, where non-consanguineous marriages, 2.4%. And when you look at the congenital anomalies, we're talking about nervous system defects, congenital heart disease, oral facial clefts, digestive abdominal wall, urinary, genital, limb, and musculoskeletal abnormalities, genetic diseases and blood disorders like hemophilia, 3 times more likely for mood disorders and 2 times more likely for psychotic disorders. So these are increased risk substantially. You're just simply wrong.
I don't know of anyone born from cousins who has any problems.
What you're doing is citing anecdotal
Sure.
information compared to really scientific information that has a big enough sample size to really give you a database that you can rely on.
What we found was, articles online saying that the risks were a couple percent higher for birth defects.
But before you listen to Dr. Google, you have to look and see. You have to look and see what agency published that information. If you go back and see what published that, and if it's Cousins or Us, then you've got to take it.
It's true. Cousins or Us.
No, you've got to take it with a grain of salt.
Sure. But I don't think there's too many Cousins or Us out there publishing false information on Google.
Well, it's not false information, but it could be cherry-picked information, and that's the question.
Right.
This woman right here, imagine in your mind that you'd met someone that you were head over heels in love with, and it just so happened to be your cousin, and you knew that if you weren't with this person, you would always be unhappy, you would never have the connection that you sought after, you'd never have that deep level spiritual thing that every single one of us in here craves. And you're telling me you wouldn't do it? Well, I don't know. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the risk, and I'm going to be happy that I did it because I get to be with the woman I love, and that's just that.
When we started today, I asked the question, was there anybody here that thought it was okay for first cousins to get married? And I think maybe there was one hand maybe that went up, and almost all hands went up when I said if you thought it was not okay. If you've changed your mind, raise your hand. Okay, maybe 5 or 6 have raised their hand. Now, the question that you guys posed to me was what I thought about the relationship. I thought you were going about it the right way or the wrong way. Technically, you've not moved in yet, right?
That's correct.
Okay. You've not admitted to having sexual relations in Utah, which
That's
means
also
you're
correct.
commuting a lot.
A lot of gas.
We're newlyweds. What do you
A lot of
expect?
gas.
A lot of drive time to Colorado.
A lot of drive time.
Get
A lot
over-
of GPS.
We're taking advantage of it being legal in California in the last day and a half.
So
to yourself.
I think it is naive and narcissistic to say we are trying to change the law, therefore what we would do that contravenes the law is okay in the interim. That's not the way a prosecutor would see this. That's not the way the Department of Child and Family Services would see this. So I'm just telling you, you asked my opinion. My opinion is protect your children, and to do that, live within the bounds of the law until such a time as you can change it. Okay, we're out of time. I want to thank all of my guests today. A special thanks to Dr. Charles Sophie Special thanks to Dr. Dina Grayson for being here today and sharing all of your information. If you have questions for me, please go to drphil.com, and don't forget you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my new podcast, Fill in the Blanks. It's free. All you have to do is just hit the subscribe button. That's PHIL in the blanks, with a new episode every Tuesday. And don't miss my new podcast series, Analysis of Murder by Dr. Phil. My first installment, called The Killer Thorn of Gypsy Rose. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Shortly after leaving the stage, Michael and Angie proudly announced on social media that they are expecting their first child. We'll keep you updated.